Okay, it's streaming.
Yeah.
So namaste and welcome to the AuthoREXperience Conversations, Alan D'Souza.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure having you with us to discuss your book. And how's the weather in the UK?
It's pleasant. It's nice. It's warm. And, you get great opportunities to go to outdoors and enjoy the outdoors.
Do you want to adjust your camera a little better so that we can see your face better? The handsome one and only Alan D'Souza, the advertising guru, the communications expert, right here in the flesh with us on the AuthoREXperience Conversations. Much better. We can see much more of you now. Yes. And a warm welcome to everybody who joined us in the audience on Facebook Live. So, Alan, it's been a long time since we last met, almost, I think, 18 years ago when we spoke at the Northeastern Chambers of Commerce event in Guwahati in Assam.
Right.
I remember, I mean, we met once, but we bonded well and we had huge fun at that time.
Indeed.
All in a day's
all in a day's work.
All in a day's work, right? We did a lot of work. We had a lot of fun. We managed to pack up a dinner in that.
Yeah, sure.
And it was madness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So good catching up with you after 18 years.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for including me in this conversation. And I look forward to chatting with you. And
I'm looking forward to learning from you. I mean, advertising and marketing and integrated marketing, which you're specializing in now, is something which is very dear to my heart, because somewhere I feel and I think and I believe that I started the first integrated marketing agency in India, which was called Target Direct and Integrated way back in 1997. And of course, we later on sold it to the Interpublic Group. But it's something which at that time was frowned upon and looked down upon. But today, I think it has gained a lot of importance in the industry, because the A does not come before the D anymore. It's the D which comes before the A. So what are your thoughts on that?
Right. See, I think integrated marketing communications is something that has evolved over a period of time.
Right.
And I think today there is considerable debate that is happening on the entire concept of integrated marketing communications.
Right.
Given that, technology is playing such an important role in the entire communication process. So, in fact, I don't know whether you have had a chance to go through my first book on IMC, which was published by McGraw-Hill in 2009. Right. It was a textbook on advertising and promotions, taking a look at an IMC approach.
Right.
Now, a lot of water has flown down the bridge since then. And in fact, my current research and my current...
Which year was that book published, Alan?
2009.
2009. Yeah, but 2009 is still like almost 20 years after 1987. And at that time, it was just called direct marketing or promotions. I mean, there was no word like integrated marketing, which had yet kind of caught the imagination of people.
Yes.
So the industry has surely kind of accepted it in a big way now. And like I said, the D or the I comes now before the A.
Yes, indeed. Jerry, I have been doing some research over the last decade or so.
Right.
And my research seems to indicate that at least as far as the Indian market is concerned, a lot of lip service has been given to IMC.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done research across companies. Mm-hmm. And while I found out in my dipstick research that there is a fairly significant awareness of what IMC is all about, but there's a huge amount of confusion in its implementation.
Right.
Now, for example, I found out that many companies practice IMC, mm-hmm. but in a gut feel sort of way,
Right.
They use various tools in different proportions, but the point is that they really don't have any formula or any process or any scientific methodology of implementing it. And of measuring the impact. There are no proper metrics that are available or
Right.
they are available, but they are not significantly used. And I think that, when we talk of integrated marketing communications, we essentially talk about integrating all the tools in marketing communications
Right.
to create a significant impact for a brand. Now, let me conceptualize a little bit here for the audience in terms of how we understand a brand and why we've called, for example, you put on the screen this title of the book, Brand Magic, the art and science of creating significant and successful brands.
Right.
And you see the brands that I have covered in this book are all brands that I have had the good fortune to work with. And most of these brands are absolutely big brands in
So
India,
these are
like.
all the accounts that you worked on, you managed, you sustained over time.
Yes, yes. And some
Yeah.
of them actually, I was involved in the right from the beginning stage, brands like Sugar Free, brands like Symphony, brands like Fog, Rasna, Amul, Wagh Bakri. These are brands that have grown over a period of time. And these are what I would like to call Deshi brands, brands that have
Right.
emerged from India and
Right.
have become very global using the tools of marketing communications. And when you go back to my book, there is a significant quote in my book which
Right.
talks about the difference between a product and a brand.
Mm-hmm.
I like to use the definition that a product is manufactured in the factory, whereas a brand is created in the consumer's mind. And the
Absolutely. I
only way,
completely agree with you.
and the only way you can create a brand is through the power of communication. I
How
mean,
do
there's
you
no,
how do you have that inception of that brand seeded in a mind where it is sustained and lives for long and has top of the mind recall?
indeed, indeed.
Absolutely.
So
I
that,
completely, we are on the same page. I share the sentiment. What you are saying echoes my sentiment. But, we cut to the chase because the whole idea was not to start talking work and talking business, because
yeah.
the idea was to get to know you a little more. I mean, I've spent a few hours with you, so I know you, but I wanted the audience to know more about Alan D'Souza, the man, the mark, the legend, the living legend, if I may call you so. You've done
Well,
huge work in the advertising
thank you
industry.
so
You
much
built
for all those
institutions, and I
adequate.
think through your brand building, you've also kind of contributed in building a nation, because somewhere the way you kind of build desi brands, like you call them, is what kind of impacts the economy and the culture of a nation, right?
Indeed,
So
indeed.
before we get into that, and before we have a more hearty debate, agreements, disagreements on what you think about integrated marketing and how I still think that, advertising still treats integrated marketing and all the other non-advertising marketing dimensions as the poor cousins still, even though there is proof and evidence to show that there's bigger value for money for a marketer, for a brand, for an organization, with integrated marketing, with direct marketing. And now, of course, integrated marketing also includes social media and digital marketing.
Yes.
So before we get into that, Alan, walk us through your life story. Tell us more about Alan the man, right from childhood to where you are now, and what inspired you to get into advertising and stay there, and build institutions which teach advertising today, which teach communications today. So let's just go through your life journey, and the stage is all yours for around 9 to 10 minutes,
Right.
uninterrupted.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for that. I come from a very humble middle class family. My mother was a school teacher, and my father used to work in the government service. Now, I think the biggest inspiration in my life has been my mother. And I think she's the one who inspired me to aspire to do something bigger than what we as a family had been able to achieve. And one of the things that she always told me, used to tell me is, and I quote, she used to say that, son, we do not have much money, we do not have much of a legacy in terms of wealth, but what I can give you is a good education. And she told me right from the beginning that you have to aspire to be the best. And that was one mantra that continued to remain in me through my life, through my school, through my college. And, it is because of that that I was able to top the college and the institutes where I studied and helped me get into the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad. And that was really my turning point. In 1972, I got admitted as a PGP student in IIM Ahmedabad. And as you know, once you reach a level like that in terms of education, the world suddenly opens up to you. Now, having done an MBA at IIM Ahmedabad, I must admit to you that even at that stage, I was not very clear in terms of the kind of direction I needed to take as far as the future is concerned. I knew that I had to do something with business management, but whether I was going to do a specialization in marketing, in OB or HR, in finance or whatever, I didn't know when I entered the institute. But over a period of time, somehow you realize, and if you know yourself pretty well, you realize what you're good at and what you're not so good at. And I realized that what I wanted to do was to work with people, to work with markets. And therefore, I chose as my specialization marketing at that stage. And I started working in a pharma company to start with. My first job was in Boehringer Knoll, where I joined as a management trainee and where actually I cut my teeth in marketing and branding. So Boehringer Knoll was a pharma company. It was a German company, and I really got tremendous amount of experience. I was able to do some good work. From then on, I moved on to Glaxo, once again a pharma company, but this time I was in the consumer products division. And that's when I got to know more about brands, more about advertising, more about communications, and I fell in love with it. I said, this is the area where I want to spend the rest of my life. So branding has been part of my life. Branding, marketing communications, advertising has been part of my life right from the beginning of my career in some way or the other. And I began to cut my teeth at that in that domain. And from there, I moved on to what seemed to me a logical step, moved on into advertising. And in those days, we used to have an agency called Shilpi, which was part of the Sarabhai group.
Right.
And then I moved into Mudra Communications, where I spent most of my life, actually. So I have had the good fortune of having had the right breaks at the right time. And Mudra was where I really, began to contribute very significantly to the branding world. And as you rightly mentioned, this book, Brand Magic, is all about those brands that have literally, put India on the global firmament as far as products and are concerned. So I started working with these brands, and Mudra was a company which gave me the opportunity of actually having half a dozen jobs in the same company, because I had a very dynamic and inspiring CEO, chairman and managing director, with whom I used to work very, very closely right from the beginning. And we helped build Mudra into what it finally became, a large, large advertising agency. When I joined the agency, it was a very small agency, which had a turnover of about 50 crores or 500 million. And when I left, it was over 1,000 crore company. So, during that journey, I had the opportunity of creating great brands, working on marketing communication, got exposed to really great entrepreneurs, like, for example, the late Dr. Verghese Kurian, who created the brand called Amul, and who's, known as the father of the milk revolution in this country. So I had the opportunity of closely working with great minds like that and creating brands and working to helping them put India on the global firmament. So that has been really a very fulfilling journey. Now, that was as far as my brand building experience is concerned. But, I think somewhere along the line, the fact that my mother was a teacher inspired me also to teach. And right from the beginning, I have been visiting lecturer at most of the management schools, the top management schools in the country, including IIM, XLRI, ISB Hyderabad, Symbiosis, and Narsi Monji and so on and so forth. So I honestly am the happiest when I'm in the class with my students. And actually, that is what has inspired me to write this book. Many of these cases that you see in my book, I actually have taught and continue to teach my students at most of these management schools across the country. And once, one fine day, the students came back and said, "Sir, why don't you put these case studies in the form of a book so that it benefits a much larger audience?" And that's what I actually did. And that's actually the genesis of this book, Brand Magic. So this book, Brand Magic, has been written in a storytelling format. And another interesting thing that I incorporated in this book is a section on what I call brand magicians. Brands don't get created by themselves. There has to be a visionary. There has to be a pioneer. There has to be someone who thinks big. There's someone who wants to create something unique and offer it to consumers. And money is the last motive. Making money is the last motive for a brand. Money comes as a consequence of a great brand, but it is not the motive. Take Dr. Kurian, for example, a very inspiring example. He wanted to put India on the world map as far as milk is concerned. In those days, when he started the revolution, India was milk deficient. But today, India is the largest producer of milk in the world and has beaten even the United States. His entire mission and his entire vision was to completely revolutionize the way milk was procured from farmers and milk was distributed and marketed in this country. And that's how the brand Amul came to be born. It's an extremely fascinating story. And when you read the chapter of Amul in my book and you read Dr. Kurian's life story, you know exactly how brands get created. And there are n number of examples over there. So that's the story largely in a nutshell of my life. I love to teach, and now I spend a lot of time writing. I'm actually on my next couple of books, and I hopefully within the next couple of years, I will be able to see them, in the marketplace. So this is a brief, as brief as I can get. Being an advertising professional, I can go and talk hours about myself and my book, but I will stop here and let you ask some questions so that we can be more tight focused in terms of the agenda.
Thank you so much, Alan, and that was a great. That's a great story. I mean, I'm very happy that you began at a very humble stage in life, and your mother was your big inspiration. So tell us a little more about your family and where was your schooling and your college. Was that also in Ahmedabad or was it in Bombay?
No,
where was that?
I was born and brought up in Pune.
In Pune.
And I studied at St. Vincent's High School.
Okay.
That was when, I had an inspiring counselor and guide in the form of a priest called Father Romal D'Souza, who was the director of XLRI, who set up XIM Bhubaneswar, and who was also the founder of Goa Institute of Management, which I was heading for a brief period of time as the director. So he was.
You stayed in Goa for some time in the past.
Yes. Yes,
and I've never met Father Romal, but I've heard a lot about him, and I have huge regard for him.
Yeah. Father Romal, who got the Padma Shri just before he passed away, was a great educationist, and I was inspired with him. So I studied in Pune, then I went on to Ferguson College, where another, part of my life, has been touched by some very great people from school, from college. In college, for example, when I was at Ferguson College, I came in touch with Professor who set up Symbiosis.
Right.
Dr. Muzumdar. Dr. Muzumdar set up Symbiosis many years ago, as you know, and the entire history of Symbiosis is well known. So he was the one who invited me to come to Symbiosis and be part of the board advisory board of Symbiosis at one point of time. I was a faculty and a director mentor for Symbiosis Institute of Mass Communication and so on. So, at different points of time, I had the opportunity to meet very, very inspiring people. When I studied at IIM Ahmedabad, for example, I mean, you were in the vicinity of some really great minds like Professor Ravi Mathai and all those professors of yesteryear who taught us and made the institution what it is today. Those were the initial years. 72, 74 was the institute was just about finding its feet. In fact, when I joined the institute, I didn't even have a proper dormitory room to stay in. So I was put up in the faculty houses, which was in those days a makeshift arrangement for some students who came in and who didn't have proper dormitory arrangement. So, that's the story of my life, where, in some way or the other, things fell in place. And I'll tell you one thing. I have a great belief that there has been some divine intervention in the various turns that my life has taken. And
Right.
even today, I have a great faith in the fact that, there is some supernatural power that is helping me along, that has brought me to this stage of life. And I have been fortunate, even today, to get a variety of tasks to do. I am on 2 books, as I mentioned to you. The next story is going to be the story about MICA, which is an
Right.
institute that I helped set up many, many years ago in Ahmedabad. So, that's what makes life very interesting. And I'm indeed grateful for, so many people who have touched my life, like you, for example. I mean, who would have imagined that we met in 2005 and then we'll be talking again only in 2023, although we've kept in touch, through other methods of communication. And hopefully this will be the starting point of many nice journeys together. Who knows?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, yes. It's all choices that we make and how we kind of create that journey. So,
Indeed.
so I did hear you speak about Dr. Varghese Kurian, and going from your life story and your journey of life. I mean, Dr. Varghese Kurian is also a huge inspiration for me. And we do something called the Karmavir Awards every year, which we instituted in 2000. I mean, we incepted in 2003, and we finally kind of launched it in 2006. And we said that if anyone should get the first Karmavir Lifetime Achievement Award, it should be Dr. Varghese Kurian, because there is no one who has a bigger contribution than him in this country called India for empowering all the milk farmers. So you worked very closely with him. What do you think is his contribution in building Amul as a federation, Amul as a movement, and Amul as a brand? What are your thoughts and insights about it?
If I strongly believe that the milk revolution happened because of Dr. Varghese Kurian. And there is no doubt in my mind that if there was no Dr. Varghese Kurian, I doubt whether the milk revolution would have taken shape the way it had. Right. And let me do a little bit of reflections on Dr. Varghese Kurian. First of all, Dr. Varghese Kurian was a very, very passionate patriot.
Right.
I mean, he always had India and more so Indian farmers at what we call in advertising terms top of mind. He always believed that whatever he had to do that. The second great thing about Dr. Varghese Kurian was his ability to think big, was his ability to visualize stuff way ahead of his time.
Right.
The third important thing that I got to know about him was that, he had a great ability to find good people and inspire them with his ideology. Right. And I have known subsequent managing directors whom I have worked with in GCMMF, all of whom have been proteges of Dr. Varghese Kurian, right up to the last one, and even the one who's currently the MD. And they have been very good personal friends of mine right from the beginning. The next important thing about Dr. Kurian was that he had a great understanding of brands. And then I remember very clearly on one occasion where we were chatting together about brands and about Dhara, which is a brand I helped him launch in India. He said, Alan, the biggest contribution that I have made to the farmers in this country is not the factories that I've set up or the processes that we've had, but the brand Amul that I've created for them.
True.
And he says that brand is there in the mind of every Indian consumer today. And that is a legacy that will remain way beyond me or way beyond the factories. And I think that encapsulates the understanding of a man about brands.
Absolutely. And there's a story about how the movie Manthan was produced.
Indeed.
With contributions from each of the milk farmers.
Indeed.
Who made a contribution to finance the movie.
Indeed.
Are you familiar with that story?
Yes, of course. I know Shyam Banegal produced that film, and Smita Patil was the lead actress in that film. And, the Dr. Kurian also was featured in that film. So, the milk story is a fascinating story. And this once again shows you how Dr. Kurian believed in the power of communication.
True.
He knew that, communication needs to be inspiring. True. And we have a number of examples even in today's world of how phenomenal communication creates great brands. And that's the story it's all about.
Very true. Very true. Great. So brilliant. Thank you for sharing those insights about Amul and Dr. Kurian. I have huge regard for him, and I felt that if anyone should get the first Lifetime Achievement Award, it had to be Dr. Varghese Kurian, especially because the state denies him the Bharat Ratna, which I think he's most eligible for and most deserving. And yet we give it to several other people, but we have not given it to him as yet. And there's a story behind
it. That's another story in itself. And but I think that maybe this is not the opportune time to talk about it. But the fact remains that he made a very, very significant contribution to India and India's economy. And I don't know whether you are aware, but there were several people who wanted to finish him off, if I might use a very crude term.
Yes, I know about that.
And, but he sustained. He was a man of great courage, great grit, and great, strength in his values. And he never compromised. I don't know whether you are aware, he never took a salary for his job. He used to take
I know about that. I had the good fortune of spending some time with him when he came for the awards with his Sena half, Molly Kurian. And I must tell you this, that, after his death, his wife, Molly Kurian, called me and said, we've sent out a press release. And the only award he wanted us to mention was the Karmavir Award, because he said, I got this award without any lobbying from anyone for it, right? Because all other awards people have to lobby for, even, my office has had to lobby for them. And one of the most touching things was that people from Ahmedabad, people from Anand, people working in Amul, even though he was not the chairman of Amul anymore, came to Delhi for the award and ensured that he was comfortable. They came to the airport to pick him up, and then brought him to the center, because we used to do the awards at a place called Gandhi Smriti, Gandhi Darshan at the Satyagraha Mandap, as the new freedom movement to kind of reclaim the principles and preserve the principles of democracy. Anyway, like you said, that's
just one more point. One more point that I might like to mention here is Dr. Kurian, when he was alive, he also asked me to create what is now known as the Dr. Kurian Award, which is an award that is given by the Indian dairy industry to anybody who does great work in the dairy industry. And another point that I must mention is, after his death, on his birth centenary, his daughter Nirmala Kurian approached me to write a chapter in the coffee table book that was finally produced, and you'll find the book titled "The Milkman of India," And that book has a chapter where I have recounted some of the experiences that I had with Dr. Varghese Kurian.
Superb. I look forward to getting a copy of that book from you, and I'll read that chapter soon. So coming to your book, Brand Magic, Alan, I write true stories of real heroes, because my intent was very clear that the youth and the students of India and the world somehow kind of end up thinking celebrities are heroes, whether they're movie stars or sports stars. And that kind of defies my concept of a hero, because I always say that the real hero is the ordinary person who's doing something extraordinary to make a difference in our world, to make a difference in our society and champion change, whether it's Dr. Varghese Kurian or the several people that I've written about. So that was my inspiration, and I think of myself as the historian for all those ordinary people who probably never get a mention in a newspaper or in a magazine or prime time on television. So we try to mainstream those ordinary people who are doing extraordinary work. They're going beyond and going for extraordinary. So what is the intent? I mean, you told us about how you were inspired by some students who asked you about writing your stories, and that you employed the format of storytelling in your book, Brand Magic. So what is the intent, and what do you what is the objective of the book?
See, the objective, I'm very passionate about brands.
Right.
And I believe today brands are everything, Even we as human beings are brands, We craft ourselves, we have everything that a brand requires, and we fashion it over a period of time.
Right.
So brands have been my passion for many, many years. I have taught branding. And I see brands evolving over a period of time. So I very clearly, my intention of bringing out this book, and hopefully there will be many other to follow, because brands are evolving all the time. The genesis of this book is for anybody who is interested in brands. And I think today, in my view, everybody should be interested in brands, either as consumers, because when we go out, we buy brands. We don't buy products anymore, we buy brands. So understanding what brands are all about is, to my mind, fundamental for any human being. And therefore, I said, let me start with this book, which talks about brands. And it's written in a language which anybody can understand. It's not meant for only MBA students or MBA professionals. It's meant for them, but it's meant for anybody who's interested in marketing. The small entrepreneur who wants to create a big business, the professional, the entrepreneur within companies who wants to understand how big brands were created. And this book, Brand Magic, has insights which nobody else knows about. I mean, a lot of it is culled from secondary data, but a lot of it is personal experiences of mine, which have found a place in this book. Now, I felt that, this is a legacy I must leave behind. And what better way to do it than put it down in writing? A lot of us have a lot of things which we, as teachers, which as academicians, we keep on teaching and we keep on researching and we keep on doing, but very often we don't write much about. And as I was mentioning to you, one of the institutions that I helped create when I was in Mudra is an institute of marketing communications called MICA. MICA stands for Mudra Institute of Advertising, Ahmedabad, Mudra Institute of Communications, Ahmedabad. That's how we started. And I was one of the founders of that institute. And the fundamental founding principle of that institute was to create people who would be excellent in the area of communications and would create great brands. If you see today, we created MICA about a little over 2.5 decades ago. But today, the students of MICA are occupying prime position. They are managing directors in many of the advertising agencies that you have in India today. Our students are disseminating marketing communications, creating brands. This world is all about brands, and I think brands drive economies. I think the best proponent of branding is our Prime Minister today. For example, you can see how he has created the Modi brand. And I think that is something that has been done very strategically. In
Right.
fact, I have done research in that area of all the communications tools that the BJP has used in order to create the entire aura about the party and about the brand Modi. So I
Right.
think, everybody today understands brands and what brands can do. And I think that that is fundamental. And my passion in life is to learn more about it, understand the changing context in terms of digitization. In fact, I was just reading a chapter of my next book, which has got to do with artificial intelligence, which has got to do with social media, which has got to do. There's so much happening in the world today. Our world is changing, and I think it's so fascinating for me as a student of branding to understand what is going on. And I think my passion is to disseminate as much information in this area to as many people as I possibly can. And that's the genesis of the book. And that's the genesis of all the work and my life's work and what I'm going to do in future.
Right. Very nice. And I think that's a great intent, and that's a great insight that you offered about how it's important to understand how brands touch all our lives. And then, of course, on a lighter note, you spoke about Narendra Modi and how he has created a brand of himself. And I had the opportunity to work with him to write a book called Man Ki Baat, where I complimented some of his thoughts, counted many thoughts. And just on a humorous note, so while you have the Namo brand, Namo has also created the Raga brand and the Pappu brand, and Pappu in turn has created the Feku brand. So it's all in brand building, right?
All in brand building,
Yeah,
absolutely,
absolutely.
undoubtedly.
Yeah, and I like to say even negative publicity is good publicity, right? So I think it works well.
Branding encompasses everything, and when you
Absolutely.
talk about brands, you're also encompassing a competitive framework, which we
Right,
always keep talking about,
right,
because brands don't work in isolation. They work vis-a-vis competition. And
right,
therefore, brands are created vis-a-vis the competition. And sometimes you do fight the competition in different ways. So,
right.
so that's branding for you anyway.
Absolutely. So what are what is the one big story from each of these 10 brands whose stories you've told in your book, Brand Magic? What is that one thing that is a fond memory for you working on each of these accounts? An anecdote, a 1 minute anecdote for each, or maybe half a minute.
See, I think
Amul, you've spoken about, so it's the other 9 that you need to speak about more now.
If you get a chance to read my book, and it's available on Amazon, but I'll be happy to send a copy of the book.
No. I've gone through the book and read parts of it, but I'm saying, what is that one story which touches you working on each brand?
Every brand, in my view, has to have a vision.
Right.
It has to have a purpose.
Right.
And if you take each of these brand magicians that I have talked about, whether you take a Darshan Bhai Patel of Fog, whether you take a Mr. Virani of Balaji, whether you take a Mr. Khambata of Rasna, each of these guys have had a certain sense of brand purpose in terms of what they intended that brand to do as far as individual customers are concerned. And therefore, I think the focus, the most inspiring thing and the most lovable thing for me of working with these brands is that I have begun to understand very intimately the Indian consumer. And I think the Indian consumer, a lot has been written about the Indian consumer, but I think the Indian consumer is an absolute fascinating case study.
Okay.
And the Indian consumer makes his power known whenever it is necessary, whether it is in the consumption of brands, whether it is in the type of governance that he or she wants, whether it is in the type of lifestyle that they want to lead, whether it's the kind of relationships that they want to develop, in whatever phase of life that, or whatever sector of life that they would like to do. I think brands become central in those people's lives. And I believe consumers adopt brands. In fact, I believe that brands get fashioned not by the marketeers, but by consumers.
Right.
So the starting point of a brand are those 1.2 billion consumers that are there in this country. And
Right.
it is a fascinating understanding of these consumers and what makes them tick that creates brands. And I think that has been the underlying principle in all these brands that I have had the good fortune to work with. And therefore, every brand carves its own history, if you may, carves its own psyche, if you may. And that comes through in terms of the way the product is created, the way the pricing is done, the way the distribution is done, the way the promotion is done, the typical 4-5 Ps that we keep talking about all the time. I think this is a branding is all about that. And I think being a marketing and branding guy, I think that's what really gives me the kick.
Super. So, Alan, before we move forward and talk to you about how you go about building a story, how you go about telling a story in your books, which would be a small masterclass for future students, the youth who want to write books, self-help or stories, etc. But before we go on to that for our segment, what are the few books that you're working on now? Can you tell us a little more about those?
See, one of the books that I'm working on is Brand Magic 2.
Okay.
Which is basically, the first book is all about Gujarat brands.
Right.
The second book is likely to be about brands that are national, not only based in Gujarat, but these brands are now going to be more technology-driven brands,
Right.
I've got a few brands in my portfolio which we are working on, where a lot of these brands today are driven by digital marketing, digital communications. If you see the brands in Brand Magic 1 were largely traditional brands, used traditional methods of marketing like print, television, radio, out of home, and so on and so forth.
Right.
The next book is likely to be focused more on a more balanced view of the old media and the new media. I think India as a country is a very complex country, and there are different segments of population, and there's different varying degrees of media penetration. So therefore, while digitization and digital brands may be more urban in phenomenon, when you go to the rural areas, you have a different kind of complexity. So that's the second book that's one book that I'm working on.
And when is that likely to be published?
Hopefully in another, as I said, the time frame for these 2-3 books is 3 to 5 years. So in the next 3 to 5 years, I hope to get at least 3 or 4 publications out.
And your publisher for Brand Magic was MICA, right?
Yeah, MICA. My Press was the publisher. And for my first book was McGraw-Hill, which was the textbook. Now, the second book, which is also the extension of my first textbook, is going to be on the new IMC, as I call it, because IMC has changed completely since my last book was written. It's going to be more about, the new methods of marketing and marketing communications. It includes social media. It includes digital marketing. It includes artificial intelligence. It includes a lot of these chapters which were not there earlier. And it includes challenges that that marketers today are facing in implementing all these strategies. So we're trying to understand that and bring out a book in that area. So that will be most probably a textbook for the next generation to understand how IMC is likely to function in the next decade or so. The third book is about the MICA story. As you know, I have been one of the founder members of MICA, and the current director of MICA, along with a professor of MICA, and I are co-authoring the MICA story, which is going to tell the audience about how this unique institution, which was created 25 years ago out of a dream that we had of creating a very different management school, how it came about and what made it one of the top 50 schools in the country today. So that's going to be my third book. So these are the 3 basic books that I'm working on as of now. And hopefully within the next 3 to 4 years, I should be getting these books out.
Excellent. And all the best to you for all your books. And I'm sure that they will make a huge difference in the minds of consumers to understand branding, to understand integrated marketing. If there's one big change that you would like to see in the advertising and the integrated marketing industry, what would that be?
See, if there's one great change that I would like to see, I would like to see marketing and communications professionals having a holistic view towards marketing communications. Today, I see most marketing communication agencies working in silos. For example, a digital agency will look at marketing communications only from a digital perspective. An out-of-home agency will see only from an out-of-home perspective. A PR agency will see it only from a PR perspective. Above the line agency will see it only from the perspective of print or television. So I think there is a need for putting all these communications tools together, because I think it will help marketers to understand how to allocate their budgets. Today,
Absolutely.
if I am a brand marketer and I want to bring out a great brand into the market, I need to get complete 360-degree advice in terms of how I should go about using the various tools of marketing communications in an
Absolutely.
integrated way, in an optimized way, so that I don't waste most of my money doing things that are not useful.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. So though we call it integrated marketing, the cohesiveness is missing, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's what needs to come in. And I'm absolutely in agreement with you. And I echo your sentiments. And I hope the people in advertising, the people in integrated marketing services or solutions, as it is called, are listening and pay heed to that. So coming to the to the storytelling segment, as you know, I also like telling stories of real heroes. And what we are doing is we're rolling out a huge fellowship and contest in schools and colleges where we are inviting students to send us stories. And one of the formats which I really like in storytelling is the Campbell Hero's Journey format, which basically tells you about how you can kind of divide the entire story into 12 parts, the hero's journey, as it is called. I'm sure you've read the book. Yeah. And several authors have used this to develop and create their stories and tell their stories, including Harper Lee for her book, To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah.
Right.
And then, of course, every story needs a hero, a villain, and a victim. So even if you see it as a brand story, right, the hero is the brand builder. The victims are the consumers who need to understand how that brand is a solution for them. And the villain could be whatever the gaps
Competition.
for which they need the solution, right? So how do you go about building a story, with the several elements, the plot, the purpose, the people, the place? These are the basic elements, right? What is the context? What is the circumstance? What are the complications involved? What is the change that is required? And what are the consequences of that change, right? So I had shared this with you earlier, but without really going through it step by step. So that's how the To Kill a Mockingbird was developed, right? The ordinary world, which is a sleepy Alabama, where Atticus Finch is living with his family happily, and then of course he's called in to defend Tom Robinson, who's a black man, and then in a place like Alabama, where you have had the Klan very active at that time, right? Uh, uh, the the risk of helping a black man is that you could get the Klan and the whites against you. And so there's a initial refusal, and then there's a mentor helper who helps him to cross the threshold, uh, understand who his enemies could be, who his allies could be, and what is the approach that he needs to use. So how would you go about developing a story? What are the few insights that you would like to share with students, youth, people who aspire to write a book, who are planning to write a book? How do you go about putting your book together?
See, first of all, I think writing a book is not everybody's cup of tea.
Okay. That's not a very good note to start on, but we'll allow you to do that.
I think it's a very realistic proposition, because who doesn't dream of writing? I know everybody can write in some way or the other,
Right.
but whether you'll come out with a good book, whether it will sell in today's context, and books need to sell. Otherwise, you don't get a
Well,
published.
Chetan Bhagat sells, so that.
Yeah. No, but
Pardon
his genre of books is a very different kind of book
Right.
in any.
Right.
And there are books in the.
I was just being a little sarcastic. Yes.
No, there are books and books and books. So
Yeah.
I'm a very plain speaking guy. So I
Right.
will talk what I believe is right. So I think that if anybody has any talent, and I'll start the starting point. Let's assume that everybody has talent. Okay.
True.
To write a book. So given that, I think in order to be able to write a story on any subject, you need to have a reason to write that story.
Right.
Okay.
So what is the purpose of what you're doing?
What's the purpose? So you need to have a purpose for that. And I think when I start writing,
what you're saying is basically you need to be driven. There has to be a pure intent. And I completely connect with that, because today what I see is a trend where every second profile on Facebook or Instagram is either a TEDx speaker or an author who has published his own book or her own book with their parents' money and made 5 copies and given it to 5 family members who never read the book. I'm completely in agreement with you that there needs to be a passion. And I was told this, when I embarked on the journey of writing Karma Kari, where a journalist told me, who will read the stories of Subhashini Mistry, Lakshman Singh? Who are they? Why don't you write about Tendulkar? Why don't you write about some movie star? And I said, but they don't inspire me. These are the people who are doing real good work on the ground. And that's my intent of bringing them to the fore, mainstreaming their lives, mainstreaming their stories, because no newspaper is telling those stories. And I think that intent worked. And I'm completely in agreement with you. But on an encouraging note, I would say that it requires practice. It's a learnable skill. So people have to learn. And I do agree and disagree with you when you say it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it is a learnable skill. So go ahead with that.
Yeah, it is possible to learn it. And I strongly believe that. I believe in the slogan, if you can dream it, you can do it.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's a very powerful slogan. And I know that as you rightly mentioned, it's a skill that can be developed. It may be a long journey depending upon.
And you teach communication. So, I know it's not easy, but it's hard, but you need to really practice and pursue excellence. So that part I agree with you. Don't create mediocrity, which is just there because you want to say I published a book. That's nonsense.
See, a book must be published. A book must be published not because of yourself. It must not be published for you. It must be published for the audience.
Right.
So the presupposition is that there is going to be a likely audience for whatever you're going to write.
Right.
And therefore, there has to be a purpose. There has to be a need for that book or for that whatever piece of work. It could be even a newspaper piece, for example, an article in a newspaper or a magazine or a blog or some content that you are developing for the digital world. See, today, we are going far beyond books. In fact, I think over a period of time, books will probably be passé. It'll be entirely on the digital format, and anybody can write, and everybody can write. Okay, so I understand your argument that there is potential for anybody and everybody to put down in the form of words, pictures, their thoughts, and which can possibly have the potential of inspiring a large number of people. So, all right. So let's assume that there is the skill or there is a possibility of developing and honing that skill in an individual. And let's assume that there is a purpose also for that book. There's a reason for creating a piece of work like that, either in the written word or in the visual format. You can use any format that you wish. So the first thing that I do when I write my book, and all my books are based on, as far as I'm concerned, my understanding of what I want to write. And therefore, I must have the knowledge and the experience in that area. I couldn't be writing about brands if I knew nothing about brands.
Right.
Very simple. So I have gained that knowledge over a period of time, gained that experience over a period of time, and have developed a certain ability to craft that into words and pictures and put it to the audience. So that's the first step. That's the first step, is to have the knowledge and the skill to be able to write a book. And therefore, the first thing is identify the need. The second thing is Having identified the need, you have already identified the target segment, the target audience, in terms of who's going to read the book. And therefore, these are the first two starting points. The next thing that I do is I develop a framework for the book.
Right.
What is going to be the chapters? What are, you start off with a broad title. For example, Brand Magic is a broad title. But what's Brand Magic going to contain? It has to have chapters. It has to have chapters that lead one into the other. It has to be told in a format that's going to be interesting to people. Otherwise, as you said, nobody's going to read it. And if nobody reads this, then what's the point in wasting your time writing something like that?
True.
So
true.
therefore, good books are written with a purpose. There is a chapterization that has to happen. There has to be a writing that has to happen.
The intent has to be very clear and straight.
Yeah. Then a very big component of book writing is research. Many people don't do research. I do a lot of research. In fact, for all my books, thanks to MICA's support and thanks to other institutions with which I'm associated, they provide me a research associate who does research on the book that I'm going to write about. So,
and I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Today, that a lot of material is available online, but you must know what to pick and choose and how to pick and choose and how to craft that into something meaningful using your own experience. So research is an important part of that activity. So you need to have that put inside. And then, of course, you spend hours and hours, writing, rewriting the chapters, going through it, throwing pieces of paper into the waste paper basket if you're doing it handwritten, or,
Till you get it right.
Just deleting off the computer and stuff like that till you get it right. And that's how the chapters evolve over a period of time. And once you've got the entire book or its manuscript in place, the next big task is finding someone to publish your book. The publishing industry today has been going through a very, very bad phase because people are losing the reading habit. People don't read anymore. They are more, today's generation is a generation whose attention span is very small. True. And therefore, you have to inspire that generation with stuff that they are interested in reading and very, very quickly. So therefore, whatever you do, whatever you produce has to be extremely interesting and has to be quick. Otherwise, it's likely not to be read.
Very true. Because the current attention span is less than 3 seconds.
Yes. So how do you get, I have been the director of Goa Institute of Management. I have been the founder member of MICA and of other business schools. And I know that today's students are very different from the students I taught 40 years ago.
Very true.
Earlier people used to go to the libraries. Today, there are books and books and books in the library. In fact, I did a research amongst, in one of the school, when I was director of the Goa Institute of Management, I asked my librarian to do a research in terms of footfalls into the library and the number of books that haven't been read ever since they have been brought into the library. Right. You'll be surprised to see that almost 70% of the books that were bought for the library were never touched upon.
Very few people have a habit of reading. And I always say, to be a good writer, to be a great writer, you have to be a great reader. Because whether it's research or other books as reference points, if you're not reading them, if you're not reading the research, if you're not really kind of digging deep into understanding how to bring that subject to life, how to bring that story to life, then you are actually doing a disservice towards the reader and just wasting their time. And I completely agree with you on that. On that, there's no disagreement at all. Coming back to this is the classic format of storytelling: the hero, the villain, and the victim. And you worked on Geo, and of course the brand which was earlier launched when Dhirubhai Ambani was still alive was called Reliance Infocom. And I remember that line that he came up with: "Mera sapna sabka apna," right? And the way I see it over there is that the hero is Reliance Infocom, which has emerged as a brand, as a telecom brand. The villain is all the other telecom operators who are charging exorbitant amounts of money for calls per minute, per second at that time, right? Even SMSs were very expensive. And the victims, of course, were the consumers who were at the mercy of the mobile operators. And then breaking prices started at that time, and Geo again changed the game. So do you think this format works well even for brand stories?
Yeah, actually, your perspective of geo within this format is slightly different from my perspective.
Okay.
See,
Okay.
for example, in this, I would take off the skeleton from the center
Right.
and put a smiley instead.
Okay.
To me, that is today's world,
Right.
where you look at uh, a smiling person rather than someone who is dead and gone.
Right.
So the hero to me in this case is the consumer.
Hmm.
It's not so much the producer. The victim could be the manufacturer himself,
Right.
because if he's not able to satisfy the hero, he could be a victim, and he could be his business could close down. And the villain in this game is everybody who's fighting the victim and trying to gain the hero's attention, which is all your competition.
And that's a great counter insight. And that's nice. Yes, smiley because positive stories. Yes. Yeah. Brilliant.
So
Very nice. I like that insight.
from a brand perspective, for example, this is how I would look at my story.
Right. No, I appreciate. And that's a great insight, like I said. So yes, we come to the concluding part. To all our readers, to all our viewers out there on Facebook Live, please do buy Mr. Alan D'Souza's, Professor Alan D'Souza's book, Brand Magic. It's available on Amazon. It's available on other online portals. And to conclude, Professor Alan D'Souza, 3 life lessons that have stayed with you through life. What are those 3 life lessons that you can share with our audience and with me?
First of all, I would call them, let me start off with purpose. I start off by saying, what is the purpose of my life? What am I here for? What do I want to do for myself? And that, I think, has been an underlying principle in my life, trying to explore. And this purpose could change from year to year, from decade to decade. But you have to have a purpose for everything that you do. That's the first thing. The second thing that I think is that you must have a passion for whatever you do. Once you have defined your purpose, and once you have defined, and that's what I try to do. Whatever I do, I try to do best. And this comes from the learning that my mother used to tell me, even if you have to be a sweeper, be the best sweeper you can in the world.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Excel in what you do.
Yeah,
right?
excel.
And put in your best, because there is no embarrassment in any hard work that you're doing. Right? You're working hard, whether you're working as a janitor or an advertising professional, you got to put in your best foot forward. I completely agree with that.
And
Great. What was your mother's name, by the way?
Alzira D'Souza. Actually, I must send you a booklet which I have published in her memory. It's called Life's Lessons That I Learned from My Mother.
Super.
So
I look forward to that booklet.
Yeah. So you just send me your mailing address and I'll mail that to you.
Surely. Now, you can send me the soft copy also, but I look forward to the booklet.
Okay. And the third thing that my life lessons is integrity. This is something that I've learned from some of the more finest people that I've known, people that I have worked with, people like Dr. Kurian. Right. No compromise on integrity and honesty.
Absolutely.
That's what your life is all about.
Leadership in life is all about character, and character is integrity, and integrity is what you're doing when no one is watching. Absolutely. So great life lessons. Thank you, Alan, so much. To reiterate, the first lesson, purpose is very important. Why do I do what I do? A lot of people are running very fast without knowing where they have to go. So purpose gives you direction in life. So you must discover your purpose. To quote the great Dr. Viktor Frankl, who writes in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, you cannot invent your purpose. You detect it, you discover it by regular introspection and reflection. So that's the lesson for you. Second is, be dignified in what you do, whether you're working as a janitor or a top shot profession, it does not matter. It's all temporary, right? There's no embarrassment in doing any hard work. I think the embarrassment is in doing jugaad, doing things that are unethical. Even sweeping the road or cleaning the roads, because Swachh Bharat is very much a part of the country's narrative today and the mission today. So what's the shame in cleaning your own home? But people find it embarrassing to pick up a broom and clean their country. So there's no embarrassment in that, right? Anyone who works hard should be respected. So we should have dignity of labor also. And third, integrity, right? It's the mother value. And if that is compromised, everything is compromised. So thank you so much, Alan, for those great life lessons which are passed on to us by you, but they're coming from your mother. I can see that. So I look forward to that booklet, and thank you for making the time to be with us today. Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jerry, for having me on your show, and look forward to interacting with you more. It was an absolute pleasure.
We should.
Spending time with you.
I'll give you a shout when I'm in Ahmedabad next.
Please do. Right. Okay.
So look forward, and my love and regards to all at home in the UK, and I look forward to seeing you soon in India.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.